Hi, this is Ash Beck with BuzzPop. We're with Drik Rawlin Dye today at Rawlin Hats in Signal Hill near Long Beach, California. Thanks for joining us.
Here we are at Rawlin's studio where I make all the hats. We have all the tools here for hat making. These are all like the different, from the stitching to the exterior hat bands to the sweat bands, all of it's right around here. And this is where you can come pick out from, like I was saying, from the thread that we'll use to the, if you want to put like a grow grain on the exterior of your hat, this is where you'll find it. When you come on down, we'll go through, you could pick out like your felt, you could pick out what stitching we'll use to hold on anything. It's a full like hand done process. And so each piece you're going to be able to pick out from either what I have, or if you have something that you want to bring in and incorporate into the hat, this is where we'll do it.
Drik, this is an amazing studio. I love your hats. Can you please just talk about your process of making them?
I make hats. I make all kinds of hats. It's kind of like what I do is they're all like one of a kind. I mean, even if you're like, I want that hat, you're not going to get that. I mean, unless you literally buy that hat, it's like, I have to, like, I'll get it close, but it's like every single time I make it, your hands are doing different things. I could be in a different mood. I could look at it in a different light, and that's what makes it so cool, is like, it's this one hat. Like, that's the only way that this one hat is going to look. And to me, that's super special. Finding like the imperfections, I think, are what make them the best thing ever. It's like, accidents, I'm not saying like accidents make the hat, but they also they give it their own life, And so I'll go through like say like I'll be into something, like an idea will come through, and it's like, I'll be like into, maybe it's like wider brims or a taller crown. And so this will be carried out through all different styles, whether I'm making like a classic like telescope style hat or a big cowboy hat, like 10-gallon hat. They all have this like Western style theme, like where like through like distressing or like whatever accoutrements I want to put on it. Like I'll find stuff out in the desert, like an old rusty nail. I'm like thinking about putting in one of these hats that I've got going on right now. They all kind of have that feel because, again, it's sort of like the life that I enjoy living. And I want to express that through these Western-styled hats.
I know you like spaghetti westerns. We all do. Did that inspire you to make your first hat?
I guess like lots of the inspiration, not only from living in the West, but I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, spaghetti westerns, the old Clint Eastwood stuff, watching the old classic westerns. I mean, that was, I think, seeing, the man with no name, drifting around from desert town to town. Who doesn't love that? That's so kick-ass. And so I think that was, like upon making hats, I think originally, in fact, the first hat that I made was not a straight rip, but it was like my interpretation of it. And that obviously led to all kinds of others, all kinds of, different brim sizes, different crown heights. And the more that I actually got into it, the more kind of accentuated those have become. And I kind of draw inspiration from all over, if you're checking out some hat, that you'll see on some like TV show or something, to some guy walking down the street. And they'll like inspire different color ideas. I remember I was driving down the street and I saw this house that just had this super bitchin', like the way the trim was compared with like the house color. It was awesome. And I think I immediately came home and was, trying to figure out how to kind of recreate that.
I know you've traveled throughout the Southwest and Texas. Can you talk about that and your influence in making Western hats?
Growing up in San Luis Obispo is California, like surf, skate, all that, and I loved it. But growing up, we would go out, we'd do like road trips out to Texas. So as a young kid, like, you know, it was like full on Griswold, you know, shoot across, like drive out through Arizona and New Mexico, check out the whole Southwest as like a young kid, which was insane. And my pops would, you know, we'd go through, cruise through like Zion, Bryce, up through Colorado, you know, through like New Mexico, being able to check out like everything. It was so insane. So my appreciation for it, I think, you know, when you're 6 or 7, it's like you got your sister in the back of like the Chrysler van with like the wood paneling. It smells like 3-day-old food. It's hilarious. But anyway, it was awesome being able to check that out. Like check out where the whole Texas side of the family was. Having my uncle was like a big like Harley mechanic. Grandfather, you know, got him into it through riding like old Indian bikes. It was insane.
Who inspired you creatively?
My grandmother was actually a pretty serious artist. I remember like going out to her place, and she would just have like 5 or 6 oil paintings going on at a time. They'd be wet, and she'd work on one, you know, and it wasn't like professional. She just had them like laying out in some like dark area of the house. She'd have one on an easel, and then, you know, it was awesome. I always appreciated it, but I think as my artistic side started developing, you know, my appreciation for it like skyrocketed. She would do it like all on like her own. Like I think she took some classes a long time ago, and you know how most artists do is they'll study like the classic way of painting and everything, but then she really started to develop like her very own style, and it's pretty insane. Like it's nuclear. Like she was super eclectic, like bright colors. She wore more jewelry than like Mr. T, you know, like she would have bracelets halfway up her forearm. You could hear her like walking down the street. She was just doing it all like on herself, you know, like it was such like an individual thing, you know. People in Texas I never saw anybody dressed like that. It was pretty awesome. So anyway, that's like a little bit of like the family history. Forever I felt like it kind of skipped me. And it wasn't until later on when I started getting into like graphic design, that kind of thing, where I found like I wanted to create and figure that out a little bit more. So I started making the hats as an homage to like my grandmother, the artistic side of my family. Actually, it was my girlfriend had this bitchin' idea. She's like, dude, why don't you figure out a way that you could like kind of incorporate some of her stuff into your hats? And I was, you know, like thinking about it because it is so unique. And like when you walk into my parents' house, it's all over the walls. And I would have it like in my old apartment here in Long Beach. It was, you know, I'd have these big giant paintings. And so what I ended up doing was figuring out a way to put it onto the inside of my hat. And, you know, I'd print them up and printed it out, figured out a way to print it onto a fabric after taking pictures of it. And it was like icing on the cake. Like it just made them so rad. And being able to like include this like family history into what I'm doing, it just feels like, you know, there was like a no-brainer. Like I had to do it.
What questions do you ask people when they come to you to make a hat?
I'll ask people like, what do you plan on using your hat for? What's it going to be? Do you want to use it for like an actual hat, like against the elements, or is it going to be just a fashion forward piece? I don't think that there's any right or wrong at all. It's totally your personality, how you want it to be you. And I think it's like a huge reflection of you. Like obviously, you know, people, there's like there's like a whole thing on hats, and I think it's cool, you know, like a man in a nice hat, man or woman. It looks, you know, it does draw attention. Like it's a focal point of somebody's like kit. And it really like their persona is like kind of showing through that hat a lot, you know, like it does draw attention. And I think that that's awesome, you know. Say you want to get a hat. It's like you'll come by, we'll sit down, get like a whole feel, you know, like send me pictures of what you're into. Or maybe you're like, oh, I want that hat, but maybe it's not really the right size based on like your kind of like facial structure, the way that like your hair is, you know, like a really small hat on somebody with like long, luscious hair might not be the best. And so it's fun to kind of come on by and like feel out who you are, you know, what your style is, and match that up with whatever we have. Everybody has their own style, you know. Maybe they don't want to have like, maybe they don't want a cowboy hat, or, you know, they don't even want like a Western hat, but they want to have something that kind of speaks to them. And so you get to pick out like everything, you know, from the stitching to the felt color to, you know, whatever. If you have like some scarf that we could like butcher up and turn into like the band on the exterior, then that's what you'll get, you know. I mean, that's the fun part about like picking out your own hat, right? Like it's not, oh, I saw that and that's, you know, I saw that in the store, so I'm thinking about getting it. It's like, okay, what do you actually really want? Like, what's your ideal hat? Like, do you like the flat brim? Like, do you want it turned up cowboy style? Do you want something like a family heirloom that we could incorporate into it? Like, for instance, this buddy of mine was getting married, and so he wanted a hat for his wedding. And it was so sick. He came down, he had like his suit and everything picked out, and this belt that was just this Kelly green leather, like designer belt. It was super sick. He ended up buying two of them, one that he could wear on his suit, and then he brought the other one over. We butchered it up, cut it all up, and actually made the hat band out of it. So like his hat band and belt matched. It was so cool. And then he brought a tie to fit underneath that leather piece. I'll have to show you a picture of it later. It came out really rad. And so that's like kind of the cool thing, is like putting your own personal touch on it and like working together to try and find the ultimate, you know, your ultimate piece. That's kind of that is like the funnest part about doing all of these, is being able to like customize each one on like kind of what the hat says to you.
Hats serve as fashion, they serve as protection. Can you talk about what hats mean to you?
How you decorate your hat kind of says a lot about you. Whether it be a really kind of like toned down hat where you're using it just for, you know, for what a hat's kind of meant to be, like protection from weather and that kind of thing. Or if you want it to be like this statement piece that's using for fashion only, you know, I think it kind of says a bit about who you are. And I think that's also, it's important. It's important in how you design it and the style of hat that you want to use. The whole like how you wear your hat, what you put on it, the pinch and everything, again, that's kind of an extension of who you are. You know, like by putting, say for instance, like a big like peacock feather on it, you know, like that, it's like kind of like the more luxurious it is, and like the bigger it is speaking towards how you want to be seen as, like, you know, if you're going to be just like walking around with it really not serving any purpose, having it sit back here, then, you know, you can do whatever. I personally like to wear them like a little bit lower where it fits solid, where if I'm out in the desert somewhere or out in the mountains, the wind's going to catch it and it's not going to go flying off my head. That's also like kind of goes into colors. Will be sort of, you know, like if I want it to, like, if it's going to, for instance, like there's a big hat right back there up against the wall that is like, it's the full on like 10-gallon hat. I mean, it has like a giant crown, giant like cowboy brim on it. But if I'm out in the mountains, it's like the warmest, like it's so sick. Like it doesn't move on me. It fits really tight. I can wear it really low. So like if the wind's blowing, it like creates this whole like ecosystem that I get to sit in, you know?
What is unique about your hats? I mean, you're a pretty unique person. There's no doubt about it. And I see this creativity coming out when you make them.
There are like the, you know, massive, really killer hat companies out there. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're insane. Stetson, Resist All, you know, these guys have been in the hat game since like, I forget, it's like 1870 something. You know, John B. Stetson, like cruising out, getting beavers, like making it all himself over a campfire. I mean, that stuff's nuts. And so I understand the history and how rad those companies are. Trust me, I have some myself. But the thing is that we do here at Rawlin is putting like your very own hands into it. It's putting my hands onto it, creating something that, like you're sitting there grabbing the felt. I'm sitting, you'll watch me sit there and stretch it out for you if you're in the mood to hang around for a little bit. I'll stretch that out for you right there, and that it's coming from, the maker. I understand the history behind hats, the importance of them, and how those, like the big brands, like I was saying, don't get me wrong, like the big hats like Stetson and Resistol are awesome. I have some myself. But I also saw the opportunity then to create my own and put my own spin on it. And not only, that was kind of like how Stetson and the world of hats like even started, was people were buying just the old open crowns. They would get them from Stetson, and they would put their own pinch in them. And that was just from them literally grabbing them. Well, what I came to find out was how cool it would be to actually start building them myself and create something that I could put my own personal spin on. Yeah, the more I've been around, the more I've seen like the importance of like the handmade, the one of a kind, the non-mass manufactured, like how much quality and how much that actually like means not only to me, but I think millions of people around the world, like to have something that where you meet the maker and you're sitting there like understanding that they're going to be able to have this for the rest of their life. I think that's really cool. It's super important. Knowing that the materials are all like top notch, and that like each stitch I'm sitting there doing it by hand. It's not going to fall apart. And if you have like any problems with it, then you can come straight to the artist and get it fixed up.
You talk about the magic when you make hats. Can you elaborate on the process, the organic process that really kind of molds itself?
Once you start shaping it, once it comes off the block, that's when kind of like magic happens, where it'll start really kind of forming and turning into like its own like living being in a sense. That's like the best of the hat, when they're like, they don't have anything on them, like, and that's why I like, for instance, this one, because it's, like just like one little hit, and then as you wear it, it gets, it starts curling in funny places, the fingers start showing through a little bit, and it doesn't have much on it. It's like the hat just kind of starts doing the talking for itself, which I really like.
Can you just talk about all the things that surround us?
These are like the different hat block sizes that we have here, from smallest to the largest down here. These are made down in Costa Mesa at my buddy's place. And then, there's the different colors of stitching that we'll use. Lots of these pieces are just for, it gets like pretty kind of nitty gritty in how the hat actually, like from the crown to the brim, you'll actually put like a rope around it, So we got everything here, from like punching, like leather punching for certain like exterior sweatbands. It's all kind of, this is where I'll make it.
Dirk, this is an amazing place. Your studio is fantastic. Your hats are to die for. I'd like to have one.
Let me show you some of the hats over here that I've been working on. Let's see, I guess I could start with the first. This was the first hat that I had ever made out of like, it came out awesome. I was so stoked on it. Just being able to like put together a hat, like for a first shot, worked out. It was amazing to me. It was like a lower quality felt, but I was still able to get the shape of it, and that's what kind of spawned the whole thing. In fact, I didn't even really know if I wanted to continue after doing it, but having made it and then having it actually work out was just like, I got to do more. I got to like get into it. So I started doing it and figuring out that I needed like higher quality materials. I wanted to find like really kind of create my own style. And aside from it, like sure, like the whole like rock and roll feel of a hat is that kind of like was a big sort of inspiration towards my hats. The more I got into it, the more I like started pushing towards the more Western, like original feel of them. And that's really kind of the direction that I've been going in, is like those, like a lot more like Western feel, like some of the like older cool styles that, you know, like for instance, this is that, as I was saying, that real open crown look. And so this is what the old hats always used to look like. And then people would grab them, pinch them, and start to develop like their own look for them. And so this is like the kind of what the original like old boss of the plains, they would call it, would come out looking like from John B. Stetson. These are kind of all different styles, ranging from different head sizes, different shapes, different brim sizes. Some of them like are the real high quality ones, such as here. This has this pencil curl on it, beautiful blue jay feather that I had found. Again, this has that interior from my grandmother's paintings with the Rawlin brand in it. The brand was actually made by a friend, so like, I mean, you know, it's just legit heated up with a torch and burn it in there. I've been going down this road of a lot more Western style hats. This is that really big one that I was talking about that I'll use like out in the mountains when it's super cold out. It fits nice and tight. It has that really big brim on it, so it not only blocks the sun, but when the wind's cooking, you can turn your head down and it stays on, doesn't go anywhere. That's like a classic look and feel to the hat, you know, like nice heavyweight felt. I love that one. And I kind of have been like going down that road of making a lot more of the Western style hats because I feel like I think it's a great look. It's kind of like taken off a little bit more too. I've seen like a lot of like positive feedback on it. And yeah, I'm still continuing to do that. I've also been digging into kind of experimental hats, putting like my own like new style of pinches on it, putting like a little bit more flair into some of the hats, you know, like this has some of that heavy distressing in the actual felt, distressed like grosgrain right here with a burlap on the inside. This has that my grandmother's artwork on the inside, the branding of Rawlin right there. And toying around with those different shapes has been a fun thing. This is kind of the same deal with that like kind of fold on the inside, but a lot more rounded out. I love how that looks. It's super simple. It looks beautiful. The material itself is gorgeous. And so I think it's just going to need like a little extra hit, but I want to keep it super minimal. And I mean, that's kind of like how I like to look at them, how like it kind of comes like naturally for the hat to just kind of, like I was saying, it kind of like takes a life of its own. If I just sit there and like kind of think about it for a little bit, it'll be like something will sort of like speak to me in a sense like, yeah, it may need that, or I'll just leave it as is. That's kind of like, well, not kind of, that's how these are too. This is another one that I don't think it needs anything. I mean, that just looks sick as is. I had started the stitching in the red and continued it throughout here, but I felt like on its own, that's just beautiful. I like that. It can maybe use a little bit of hit up here, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Some of these have some pretty cool pieces on them too. Like I found this box of pins at the swap meet. I don't know if I want to say any of that, but this box of pins down at the swap meet, and they were like these old like sterling silver pins that I was able to find like some old denim and put that in there. Again, like all the hand done leather work. I think this is a big piece of canvas. I got a big sheet of it and just ended up cutting it up and throwing it on there. And it came out pretty cool looking. This was like the first shape that I had done like that one. Again, with that beautiful interior. This is done before I had actually made the branding. So I don't have that in there right now. Yeah. Many more to come. Where I'm seeing Rawlin hats go, it's I love where it's at right now. Like just being able to make hats for people who are hyped on it that's exactly what I want to be doing. I see like being able to push that further on is exactly what I want to be doing. Being able to, like, when somebody comes and they actually get their hat and they realize that I'm going to be like, they're picking out their felt and they're picking out the stitching, they're you know, like really actually putting together like their ideal hat, and then knowing that I'm going to be able to just like, I'm actually going to sit there and do it. It's so sick to see like how hyped they are on it, and to be able to try and stoke out more and more people throughout the, you know, like throughout the future of Rawlin hats is exactly what I want to be doing. I want to keep it like, I want to have like the hands-on process. I don't want to like ever get to a point where it's like I got some mold and they're just cranking them out. That's not my gig at all. Like the whole deal is being, it's hand done by me, like here, you know, in my studio. The response that I get from people when they actually get their hat, it's overwhelming to me, and then to them as well. You know, they're looking at it just thrilled out of their gourds. If it's anywhere near as important as my hats are to me, them having something like that is like, and me creating that for them, it's priceless. You know what I mean? Like the cost of the hat doesn't even mean anything. It's like, dude, if you're that hyped, as hyped as I am on my hat, just knowing that you're stoked like that is enough for me. You know what I mean?
Headed west to live out all my dreams.
Thanks for joining us. This is Ash Beck signing off for BuzzPop with Rawlin Hats in Signal Hill near Long Beach, California.